Hey, what's happening, everyone? It is I, the man, the myth, the mustache, Tim here, and have I got a brand new video for you. Welcome to part 6 of What If Deku Had a Slime Quirk. Please, sit back and relax because you are in for a treat. With that little intro out of the way, let's get on with the story, shall we? Aizawa squirmed as the giant hand of the beaked monster wrapped around his throat and lifted his body into the air. Oxygen began to grow exceedingly scarce as he started getting desperate. The stealth hero's hair began to stand on end, while a scarlet glow emanated from his grated goggles. The strength of the beast loosened enough for the man to slip out of its grasp, before sliding between its legs and jumping away. Damn it, that was too close for comfort, grunted the ebony-haired man, as he jumped back and forth from more incoming villains in the immediate vicinity. His capture scarf grabbed and slammed the opposition as he passed, attempting to subdue the majority of the crowd during his movements. Aizawa had spent an extended amount of time using his quirk, which caused his eyes to dry out and his vision to blur. Once the onslaught of villains had been settled for the most part, he believed he would have at least a moment to rest. Though, when he allowed himself to stop, a sharp and terrible pain began pulsating throughout his arm, as he felt 5 fingers grabbing onto his elbow. As he looked back, Aizawa could see one of the primary villains of the attack, the man wrapped in disembodied hands. Due to the villain's quirk, the site of his touch began disintegrating, Aizawa's elbow almost completely skinless as the deterioration began to spread. Aizawa knew that if he allowed this to continue, it would mean the end of him and his students. So he forced his body forward. Aizawa's eyes began to glow once more, triggering his quirk. Using this opportunity, Aizawa launched his scarf, which wrapped around the wrist of the hand villain, allowing Aizawa to use his momentum and slam the man into the ground. As he jumped back, Aizawa gripped his now decayed elbow as he fought back the pain. In his moment of weakness, a massive black hand gripped the top of his skull and lifted him up into the air as his injured arm was violently twisted behind him. The ebony-haired man held in his screams as blood began to flow down his face. The pressure that held him was threatening to cave his skull in. The hand-covered villain stood within Aizawa's line of sight as his quirk was nullified. But before anything else could happen, a ball of cyan slime slammed into the gray-haired villain's face and sent him backwards, while knocking the hand off the villain's face. My nose! You bastard! I'll kill you! Shrieked the pale-skinned man as his eyes teared from the blow. With his visions blurred and his senses distorted, the villain aimed randomly towards the direction of the teens. Nomu, destroy these brats! With just a mention of the monstrosity's name, the beaked beast slammed the injured man against the ground and lunged towards the defenseless teens. As it dashed forward, things seemed to move in slow motion as the Nomu approached, leaving the 2 teens paralyzed. During the debacle, they seemed to have forgotten that the slime projectile wasn't an inanimate object, but another combatant. The translucent glob of slime suddenly wrapped itself around the head of the ebony-skinned creature, causing it distress. The artificial monster attempted to remove the semi-fluid that now covered its head, but every time it reached, the slime moved away from its grasp. In frustration, the beast balled up its fist and launched a strike towards its own face, though at the very last second, the slime slid away from the head and down the creature's back. The powerful knuckles of the creature cracked against its own jaw, causing it to stagger. Wobbling from the pain, the vision of the Nomu blurred momentarily as its retinas were detached and regenerated quickly thereafter. Shaking off the cobwebs, the beast then reached back and attempted to grab the slime that now rested at the center of its back. Though due to the creature's large muscular frame, it couldn't reach. The creature screamed wildly as it forced its muscle fibers to stretch and tear, the joints and cartilage cracking as it attempted to reach its target. Just when the Nomu reached the slime hero, he immediately crawled under the arms and towards the creature's stomach. Reacting to the movement, the beaked demon moved its mangled arms forward and slammed its fists together into a hammer-like shape into its abdomen. But just like before, it missed entirely and injured itself. As it fell to its knees, the creature squeaked out a thin breath as blood began to pool and fall from its sharp teeth. Its breath was completely expelled from its lungs as the stomach collapsed. From the shoulder of the creature, a sphere of cyan slime appeared, with a condescending look on its translucent face. "Tired yet, bird boy?" As a slimy question mark protruded from his semi-liquid form. As he witnessed the ordeal from afar, Shigaraki stood, wiping away the blood from his nose, and began approaching Nomu from behind, with the slime in his crosshairs. "You stupid, mindless beast! I'll do it myself!" screamed the man as he reached out to grab the ball of slime, but missed and instead grabbed a hold of the massive shoulder of the Nomu. Its shoulder and upper arm began to decay immediately, which prompted the anti-symbol of peace to screech loudly while it reached for its decaying arm, and in desperation, tore it off from its socket, causing blood to spray all over the hand villain and across the ground. As it shakingly stood upright, the dismembered Nomu began to roar, while tendrils of muscle began to rapidly form from the torn shoulder. In a matter of seconds, its arm had regenerated. Its scarred black skin recoated the muscle, as if it had never been lost. Midoriya jumped into the air. His slimy eyes popped out of his head in shock. The two villains' attention then settled back on the slime boy, who was now in the shape of a mochi ball across from them. A wide grin formed on the face of the white-haired man, as he stretched his arms out and began to chuckle. "Nomu, kill this arrogant brat!" screamed the hysterical villain as the hulking monster rushed forward towards the slime boy once more. But suddenly, a glove-shaped fist made contact with the jaw of the hand villain and sent him flying backward. A gust of wind followed the strike, as the boots and gloves of Hagakure could be seen in place of the villain. Hagakure? That was awesome!" shouted Mineta, who finally snapped out of his trance-like state, as he witnessed his classmate come to their rescue. Asui quickly jumped out of the water and was about to approach the invisible girl, until she was stopped by her. "You guys should really get out of here. Midoriya and I can take it from here." Hagakure then gave a thumbs up and seemed to jump away, as a gust of wind blew back the hair of the frog-like teen. All the while, Mineta looked on, disappointed that he had been blatantly ignored. The two students quickly ran off to regroup with the others back at the entrance, where it so happened that the remaining members of Class 1A had managed to cause a distraction and allowed Class Representative Tenya Ida to escape the building and call for help. As the teens faced off against the shadow villain, a familiar presence joined the fray, the anger-prone blonde Bakugo, as well as the scarlet-haired Kirishima. "You idiots are still fighting this asshole!" shouted the blonde, as his teeth were bared with excitement for the battle. Even though he was fighting at 50% strength, Bakugo's arrogance and thrill for battle still prevailed. Kirishima was about to interject, but decided against it, realizing that the villains they dispatched earlier were child's play compared to what they were about to face. "No need to worry, children. Your corpses will make an excellent debut for the League of Villains," warned the shadow villain, as his voice sent chills down everyone's spines. 13, having assisted Ida's escape, could now focus on the villain. Opening their glove, tremendous suction power began pulling the shadow villain in, but it was countered by a portal that appeared between the two. The exit portal opened behind the rescue hero and began to tear the back of their suit clean off. Seeing the damage 13 had received, the grouping of teens rushed forward in defense of their instructor. Somewhere in the distance was the bicolored teen Todoroki, who sat behind rubble out of danger, with a strip of cloth covering his eyes. Hagakure managed to put the teen down in a safe space, while she went to back up Aizawa and their classmates. "Damn it, I'm useless in my condition," said the heterochromatic teen as he balled up his fist in frustration as a cool mist began to flow around his right hand. At this point, his eyes had experienced great trauma due to the powerful flash of light by the invisible girl. The special maneuver had saved them momentarily, but now their firepower had been affected, with Todoroki left essentially unable to battle. Even though he was blind, Todoroki made a barrier of ice. At least he could keep himself safe. "What the hell hit me?" shouted the hand villain as he began recovering from his random assault. Just when he managed to get to his feet, he was struck by an uppercut that lifted him in the air. Following the upward strike, a kick connected in his gut and sent him backwards. Anger continued building on the face of the villain as he gripped his stomach. "Damn it all! Fight me like a man, you coward!" spat the villain in frustration, while blood spilled from his mouth. "How about a girl?" asked the invisible teen, as she landed a flurry of punches that rocked the villain. To an outsider's point of view, the gray-haired man was fighting the air, and the air was winning. His bloodshot eyes looked around in a panic, not knowing where the next hit would come, as the only thing he could see was a pair of gloves and sneakers that just floated across from him. "Inconceivable! You brats aren't supposed to be this strong!" Before the man could continue his vengeful tirade, a kick landed on the side of his head and sent him spiraling towards the ground. The invisible girl then followed up with an axe kick that landed right on the gut of the villain, causing him to lose his breath. Elsewhere, the Nomu stood across from Midoriya, who had formed his slime back to a humanoid form. Strange thoughts began to appear in the boy's mind, as the color of his cyan body began to shift slowly to green. His hands were shaking as his eyes began to glow red. The slimy teen began to speak. Your body," stammered the boy as the glow in his eyes intensified, while the tone began to deepen. "You'd make a perfect skin suit!" he screamed as he suddenly shot towards the beaked monstrosity. The green slime then formed into a sort of tendril that grabbed hold of the creature's face. Though the Nomu attempted to remove the slime, it began to move towards its open mouth, forcing its way down their throat. Soon after the slime had been ingested by the beast. After a moment of silence, the muscled behemoth reached and grabbed hold of its throat. The creature began to squirm uncontrollably as it slammed its head against the ground. Within the Nomu, the slime began to stretch and expand, filling in the entirety of the creature's respiratory system and nasal cavities. Though the monster attempted to scream, only a deafened gurgle could escape it, as it began to squirm on the ground, the loss of oxygen shocking its system. In deep desperation, the creature began clawing at its chest, ripping the flesh that would quickly heal. Its fingernails broke the surface, trying to rip its own chest open, in order to remove the foreign substance that clogged its body. The pulsating, exposed brain of the creature began to discolor and twitch, as the lack of a working respiratory system began killing the brain cells of the beast. Blood violently squirted out of the exposed chest of the Nomu as its movements soon slowed. Its eyes bulged out, veins popping from the distress. After several minutes, the muscular being stopped moving, and its brain now a dull white, while its eyes glossed over. Its heart stopped. Asui and Mineta had seen the horrific encounter from a distance and began shaking in fear. The dwarven boy's mouth was agape, tears rolling down his cheeks as he feared for his very life. All the while, Asui gulped, hoping their classmate was all right. From the open mouth of the corpse, the green slime began to flood outward, pooling on the ground. The semi-liquid began to grow until it returned to its human form. Midoriya stood tall above the monster, his eyes still red as a look of frustration and disgust rested on his face. The freckled teen spat towards the creature as he began scanning the area for the other villain. Midoriya! The sound of his name caused the juniper-haired boy to jerk his head back and lock eyes with Asui, who stood with a defiant look. Upon realizing his friends were safe, his red eyes flickered back to their emerald tone. His expression softened immediately. "Hey guys, are you okay?" yelled the hero in training as he waved his hands in the air and began approaching his friends. Minetta's nerves began spiraling out of control. The vision of the green net taking the life of that creature made him fear for his own life. Taking a step back, the boy's attempt at an escape was thwarted by the frog girl, who held onto his arm. Just when Midoriya was about to reach his classmates, a scream grabbed hold of his attention. During the ensuing battle between the hand villain and Hagakure, the evildoer managed to put his hands on the girl, decaying part of her arm. The effect of the quirk caused the spot to now contrast with her form, as it was now a visible blackened spot, where a momentary touch had landed. With no hesitation, the juniper-haired boy quickly morphed into a slime state and dashed to provide backup. As the pale-haired man was about to lunge forward and place his hands on the semi-invisible teen, a wall of slime seemed to splash between the two like a wave. Though as the hand of the villain made contact, nothing occurred to the congealed construct. What? That's impossible! Spat the man, as he forced both his palms towards the slime. But just as before, nothing occurred. Taking the opportunity, Hagakure ignored her injury and went around the slime and managed to land a powerful kick that sent the villain back, colliding into a grouping of villains. The villains, now without their secret weapon, were at a disadvantage. The shadow villain, who was now barely able to fight back against the teens due to them locking down on his metal brace, called out, "Master Shigaraki, it's best we take our leave." The hand villain glared daggers at the heroes in training as he ground his teeth and scratched his neck raw. He knew full well retreat was the only option. Promptly, the misty portals began opening once more and allowed the mobile villains and the one named Shigaraki to escape. "This isn't the last you've seen of the League of Villains. You brats will pay, along with your symbol of ineptitude," warned the man, though his gaze settled on Midoriya. "And you, I'll see you again," threatened the villain, as he managed to escape just seconds before the doors to the USJ were blown wide open by an angered All Might. His usual wide grin had been replaced by a face of resolve and violence, though his expression quickly changed to that of confusion, as the only villains left were the ones defeated and unconscious. "Have no fear, for I am here?" Soon after, additional heroes, paramedics, and police began to arrive on the scene. Dozens among dozens of villains were put into shackles and sent away, while Midoriya sat in a corner, a blanket wrapped around his shoulders. The emerald-eyed boy looked on as the heroes transported the lifeless body of the Nomu. Due to the nature of the attack, the teens were not charged for using their quirks in battle, as it was in self-defense. Although, detectives would approach the boy, for he was the only one to have taken a life. The injured heroes, Aizawa and 13, were carted away in an ambulance, though the paramedics held high hopes of a speedy recovery. After the teens were sent back to the infirmary at UA, the ones in good health were allowed to return back to their homes. Most of the teens only received minor wounds, but there was one casualty amongst the members of Class 1A. Todoroki had been seen by Recovery Girl and additional medical staff regarding his failing eyesight. Their diagnosis was that the boy had a temporary loss of 90% of his eyesight due to the intense ultraviolet light exposure. They surmised the boy's vision would return, but it would be several weeks until it could fully recover. Thanks to the old woman's quirk, the son of Endeavor had managed to leave with his eyesight at 70%, though he would have to wear protective sunglasses for the time being. At the gates of UA, Todoroki was about to get in a car that would return him home, until he heard a familiar voice call out to him. Not being able to see properly, the boy didn't bother to move his head to find the source, knowing that the person calling out was also the person who placed him in his predicament. "Oh my gosh, Todoroki! I'm so sorry! I can't believe I did this to you! Please forgive me!" "It's fine. I'll be alright. At least we're alive." The two said their farewells as Todoroki was driven away, leaving Invisible Girl all alone at the school grounds. A large hand rested on the girl's shoulder. The teen glanced back and could see it was All Might. The two shared a smile before walking off to discuss what had occurred in detail. Later that night, Midoriya lay on his bed, his eyes fixated on the oscillating fan above him. The image of the dead Nomu haunted his consciousness, while the words of the boss villain still rang in his ear. The boy laid still for hours. The result of his actions had haunted him. Worse was the fact that he had no recollection of his actions once he faced the beast one-on-one. What on earth happened? What have I become? Whispered Midoriya, as his exhaustion finally overwhelmed him, and he fell into a deep sleep to recover his energy for the following day of his heroic education. And that's our video for the day, so thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Before I go, there's a little bit of housekeeping. First, We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing pleasures. All the information you'll need is right below in the description. So please, feel free to check out all the other incredible content our team creates. Second, on behalf of We the Celestials, I also want to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details are also in the description. So that's it for today's video, so thank you all for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day. And as always, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and stay awesome. This has been Tim, Mustache out.